Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes kicking off their spring game this Saturday. Want to dive into this roster and talk about some storylines and really some questions that we want to see answered from this Hurricanes program during their spring game this Saturday. This is a program that we obviously talk a lot about during the offseason in the transfer portal, on the recruiting trail. And at least for me personally, it's one of those spring games that I have circled in terms of seeing some of that new talent kind of get on the football field for the first time for this program. Fired up to get into this one, fired up to watch it on Saturday. And we'll hop on immediately after the game, kind of break down what we saw. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Miami Hurricane fans. The amount of support y'all show, whether we're breaking down commitments, talking about the transfer portal, talking about spring practice notes, cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. It's no secret I love talking this program, and the amount of support y'all show means the world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start off with, a lot of the emphasis is going to go to Cam Ward. We're going to get to Cam Ward in just a second. I want to start off with sounds to be the kind of star of the spring practice show for the Miami Hurricanes, and that is true freshman Elijah Lofton, who I'm not even going to label him a tight end at this point. I'm just going to call him an offensive weapon. You read the spring practice notes, this guy has emerged as one of the best pure football players on this Miami Hurricanes offense. And what I'm most excited for is kind of seeing how Miami intends to use him in the 2024 season. It sounds like he's going to be a contributor one way or the other. I think the question now is, how does Shannon Dawson decide to incorporate Elijah Lofton in this Hurricanes offense? This was a guy that we talked about a lot coming from Bishop Gormanez, the guy that not only for an undersized kind of guy, hammer in the blocking department, but also create separation in his route trees extremely effectively, dynamic after the catch with the football in his hands. This is the sign of a good offensive coordinator. We say it all the time. You can talk about schemes and X's and O's all you want. One of the things I look for elite offensive coordinators is how you utilize your talent. When you have a guy like Elijah Lofton, who sounds to be just a difference maker for this Hurricanes offense, now your job as the offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, is, hey, you got to get him involved in the most effective ways possible. We're going to get our first kind of taste of how Elijah Lofton is going to get used. Very fired up for that. I was a huge fan of Elijah Lofton coming out of Bishop Gorman. Can't wait to see what he looks like in this Hurricanes offense. Now, the next, not necessarily question, but kind of thing I want to see on the spring game is not Cam Ward. I've been extremely vocal that Cam Ward's going to be very good for this Hurricanes offense. I absolutely love the film from Washington State the last 2 years. He comes into a Hurricanes offense that is going to have an elite offensive line, a lot of talent around him. My question here is, who emerges as Cam Ward's guys in this offense, the guys that he wants to get the football to? I think the first guy you got to start off with is Xavier Restrepo. And we'll address kind of a conversation we've had a lot. I listen to a lot of Miami Hurricanes podcasts. Locked On Canes do a phenomenal job. Massive fan of Alex Donald. But one of the conversations I hear a lot is Miami needs a wide receiver one. I respectfully disagree. I think you have a wide receiver one on your roster, and that is Xavier Restrepo. Now, is he a traditional wide receiver one that plays on the boundary? No, he's not. But you're asking me, is Xavier Restrepo going to be top 10 wide receiver in terms of production in 2024? I think he absolutely is. Cam Ward loves his slot wide receivers. He loves to get the football out quickly and on time. That's Xavier Restrepo. And so I think you're going to see a true special quarterback, wide receiver battery with a guy like Cam Ward and a guy like Xavier Restrepo. And that's something I always look for in elite offenses. You always feel like you go back to a guy like Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, that quarterback wide receiver battery that can be special. It's present in almost all top offenses in college football. I think we might be looking at one with Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo. Now, I think the question for this Hurricanes offense is, who is going to be the wide receiver, that wins vertically down the field? That's kind of the question in terms of that quote unquote, we're looking for a wide receiver one. I think the meaning of that is, who's going to be the wide receiver that's working vertically down the field? my eyeballs are going to be on Isaiah Horton. We've gone back and forth in terms of should Miami go after a wide receiver in the transfer portal. I think Isaiah Horton's performance and kind of a feel of where he's at in his development is going to be one of those answers. Because you look at the potential for this Hurricanes offense, if you can have a wide receiver that can work vertically down the field, not only is that going to help you hit explosive plays down the field, a massive kind of indicator of how good offenses are, but more importantly, it's going to open up the middle of the field for guys like Xavier Estrepo or JoJo Trader or Elijah Lofton as well. And that's where Miami wants to do their damage. So you kind of need a wide receiver to step up. I think Isaiah Horton is going to be that first guy. I would like to point the Miami fans to a wide receiver that I think kind of gets slept on, because I think the fan favorite, the local kid, JoJo Trader, gets a lot of the attention. Nikar was that kind of guy at the high school level. This was a guy that has a track and field background, former basketball player. He excels working vertically down the field, tracking the football, not necessarily the body and frame that Isaiah Horton has, but the skill set of a wide receiver that can win vertically. That's Nikar. And I think he certainly kind of could emerge as a Miami wide receiver that could give that value of attacking the deeper third. Isaiah Horton, Nikar, two of the other wide receivers that I'm really going to have my eyes on during that spring game. Last two things on the offensive side of the football. The offensive line, I don't really have any question marks about how good it's going to be. It's going to be one of the better offensive lines you've seen in the country. Looking at Samson Okunlola as a guy that you're hearing him get work at right tackle, potentially at left guard. I'm interested to see the development that Samson Okunlola has had. He kind of got stunted a little bit as a freshman with some injuries. This is a guy that elevates the ceiling of what this Hurricanes offensive line can be. We all know it's going to be one of the top units, not only in the ACC, but in the country. How good can it be? I think that kind of depends on, can Samson Okunlola be a dominant guard for the Miami Hurricanes? My eyeballs are going to be on Pancake Concho. I think he fits exactly what Miami wants to do on the offensive side of the football, and that's road grade, move bodies off the line of scrimmage. They didn't call him Pancake Concho for nothing coming out of high school. Last question mark, the running back room. Again, 50-50 with Hurricane fans in terms of should we add a running back in the portal. You'll probably get a feel for, do we need some more depth in that running back room? Chris Johnson Jr., potentially Elijah Lofton. You got a lot of names there that haven't necessarily played a ton of football. How does that running back room look? Another question that we have on the offensive side of the football. Now, going to the defense, if there's one thing that you're extremely excited about if you're a Hurricanes fan, is this defense, specifically in the front seven, has sounded to be very good during spring practice. And that is without some of the top guys on this Hurricanes defensive line. Ruben Bain, believe kind of not going full go during spring practice, trying to just make sure he's healthy. We know what he is. Just make sure he's fully healthy going into 2024. Akeem Mesidor sitting out. Those are, in my mind, two of the best players on this Hurricanes roster. This defensive line has been doing very good without two of those guys. You're extremely excited about what this defensive line looks like. I think your eyeballs are on the newcomers, right? CJ Clark, Marley Cook, Elijah Alston, guys that would provide really, really competitive depth on this defensive line. And that's something we talk about a lot. You guys hear me say, not only do you need star talent on your defensive line, if you want to do what Miami does, or Miami's goals are in 2024, and that is go win an ACC championship, compete in the college football playoffs, you want to win games in November and December, you need to have that depth specifically on the line of scrimmage. You look at Michigan last year. You look at Georgia the last couple of years. Yes, they've had the star talent. They've also had the depth. I'm looking at some of those guys to get a feel for how deep is this defensive line going to be and how dominant can it be in 2024. Linebacker room, not many question marks about your starters, obviously dealing with some injuries. My question, again, is the depth on this at this linebacker room. A guy like Kadarius Hayes, another guy that we talked about a lot coming out of high school, apparently making some moves during this spring practice. My eyeballs are probably going to be on him. And then you look at the secondary, by far the biggest question mark on this team. You have some newcomers coming in. I think Zaquan Patterson we kind of identified him as one of those guys that, how does he fit in this Hurricane secondary? Is he ready to step on the field and be an impact player? That's going to have a lot to do with how, I wouldn't use the word desperate, but how active Miami gets in the transfer portal. I think we all agree that we would like to see some veteran talent come into this room in the transfer portal. But on Saturday afternoon, we're going to get a feel for, all right, how bad do we got to go get some guys in the secondary for this Hurricanes program? Those are some of my big question marks. Again, I am fired up about this spring game. A lot of new faces that we're going to get to see for the first time. We'll hop on immediately after the game, break down what we saw. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Would love to hear some of your spring practice or spring game, I should say, storylines in the comment section. We'll chop it up there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it, and we'll talk to y'all later.